Hello and a very warm welcome to the Big Carp News Podcast. I'm your host Joel Harbour and I'm delighted to be bringing you a number of podcasts over the coming months. We'll be talking all things carpy right here in the USA, everything from the history of carp angling right up to current times and absolutely everything in between. So whether you're out on the road or on a session waiting for a fish or just relaxing in the comfort of your own home, grab yourself a drink, take the weight off and sit back as I'm delighted to connect you with a number of guests right here on the Big Carp News Podcast. Our next guest, as you will hear, takes a somewhat scientific approach to his angling. From a very young age, his passion of angling led him to a career offering him a very in-depth understanding of fish and fish habitats as a fisheries biologist. Over the years, he's worked with the American Carp Society as an aquatic consultant, and as of late, making a huge move along with his family from Texas all the way back to Connecticut. He's now in search of some of the giants that reside in the waters of New England, and as I found out, his drive and dedication, I'm sure, will soon see him reach some goals. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Evan Cartabiano. Impromptu session, really, wasn't it? Kind of thrown together last minute.
Yeah, basically. It was the opportunity presented itself, and for me, that's the best time to go fishing. So
you're kind of opportunistic angler, right? You're trying to take the time when you get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's all for me pretty much short session. You know, busy, family schedule and work and everything else tends to make it difficult to get out for longer. But
better to be out than not at all, though, right? That's
exactly. Yeah, I don't worry too much about the weather or any other forecasts, simply because the best time for me to go is whenever I can. So.
Yeah, I suppose if you were to treat it the other way, you probably wouldn't get out much at all, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If it was just based on when my schedule happened to coincide with good fishing times, it would be very far and few between for me.
So we are yet to have any fish, but like anything, when you're in the middle of doing something, hopefully one of these rods will go. We've got a couple of rods out each, and we'll see how it goes.
I've seen plenty of fish.
Plenty of fish showing, isn't there?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So if anyone's got any pointers out there, not that it's going to help us at this moment in time, but to pick up some of these fish. There's some good ones showing, though. Seen a couple of really good sized fish. So, but on to Evan. Mr. Evan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know obviously you've had some hands in things like the American Carp Society. Obviously you're a marine biologist, fish biologist.
Yes, yeah. So I am a fisheries biologist by trade, and did all the schooling necessary for that, and then worked for a number of state governments for a number of years. Right. Mostly in the South, the Carolinas and Texas. And so, and now I've decided to, relocate, obviously, to New England.
Yeah, how was that move? Like, what that's big old trek across the country.
Yeah, that's I'm originally from up here, but
okay.
It's been a while since I've lived here, and moving, what was it, 1,500 miles or something. Trek. It's quite a process. Not exactly maybe the most pleasant process either, but now it's done. So now nice. I just got to figure out how to catch carp in New England.
Yeah, it's that it's quite a difference, isn't it, from being down that way to over here.
Yes, yeah, we're up here. There's, obviously in New England, you've got a lot of big rivers that are really productive. Whereas, in Texas, most of it is fishing in reservoirs. And those reservoirs can be, pretty big, sort of a mid-sized one, 27,000 acres. Around here you don't get anything like that.
No, you don't.
it's so
I feel like it's this side of the, I say this side of the pond, over this way, this side of the country, it's more in my mind, it's more like wild. Like the rivers, they're a little harsher.
Yeah.
Whereas you go more inland like that, Texas area, you've got these lakes that are, they're obviously huge, but at the same time, they're a little bit more, in my mind, looked after.
In some ways, I guess it depends on which way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
In further north where we are here, you have a lot more seasonal changes than you do in Texas,
Right. Yeah.
or anywhere in the South for that matter. And those lakes, they are man-made. That's the thing about them is up here, the river is, it may be impounded in places and whatnot, but it's still flowing. It's still essentially a river.
Yeah.
Whereas, all the lakes down there, there's not, there's maybe one natural lake in Texas, and the rest are all man-made. So that tells
Gives
you
you an
something.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. So that comes with its own, set of challenges, which are certainly different than what you experience in other places.
Yeah, now, I mean, comparing the two, obviously, like we're on a river at the moment, so obviously we know that big difference in comparison in terms of how the fish move and all that, how they feed, the natural resources that are available to them versus the lakes in like the central Texas area. What are your differences that you've seen, like in terms of the food sources that are available? Is it similar or a lot of differences?
There is some similarity for sure. Mussels and crayfish and things, those are found pretty much everywhere in the country, and those reservoirs often have a lot of those. The one really big difference is the other fish species. So further north, there's just less diversity. So in the South, you have a whole bunch of buffalo species. There's sometimes more catfish species. There's more gizzard shad. There's just a lot more fish.
Yeah, in general.
That all at some point generally eat carp bait, so that can change the fishing a little bit.
Yeah, it's it's definitely one of those things I think you got to take into consideration. You got to fish through all of those other species just to get to connect with
Exactly.
decent carp at least anyway.
Right. And the other thing I forgot to mention was the turtles. Here, in New England, there's two major species, snapping turtle, common snapping turtle, and then painted turtle.
Yeah.
Down in the South, you have those. Well, not so much the painted turtle, but you have sliders and things, a couple different species there, and as well as the snapping turtles, and then you also have soft shell turtles, and
just as big though, just as much as an annoyance, aren't they?
The soft shell turtles are really an impressive creature. They'll weigh 30 pounds, be as big around as a small table almost, and when you get if you get one on your line, you actually think you have a carp at first. They give a good run. You're
initially, right.
Well, even for a little while, they'll pull out drag and everything. You think you have a fish, but it turns out it's just a ginormous turtle.
Yeah, not for me. I mean, the few run-ins that I've had with turtles here in Connecticut, New York, that in the surrounding states, have been very quick for me, thankfully, where the hooks come out, or I've been able to kind of remove it quickly without having too much.
Right.
Too much drama with those things.
The soft shells will also, especially if you're using a longer hook link or something like that, they'll sometimes swallow the bait, and it can be a real hassle.
Yeah, don't want to deal with that.
But so I'm enjoying the relative lack of turtles.
So have you since the move, have you been getting out much here in Connecticut?
Yeah, not nearly as much as I would like, simply because we moved into a house that needed some repairs and things like that. So there's been other life stuff that's unfortunately
life just gets in the way, doesn't
You're right,
it?
exactly.
Yeah. But that's part of it, isn't it? I think.
Absolutely, and that really, my fishing, is part of that life. It's not. It's not something separate.
It gives you more to look forward to as well, doesn't it? When
Exactly.
you do get the time to actually get out there and do what you love doing, you appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, like anything else. If if it's somewhat limited, then you maybe look forward to it a bit more because it is special.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I don't know if you've listened to any other podcasts. If you haven't, no worries. But some people haven't. Some people have. Whatever. Oh, phone call.
Yeah, should have shut that off.
That's all right. Do your thing.
I don't know who it is. I don't have their number. All right.
Yeah, one thing I do enjoy to do is, or at least find out and kind of get a little background on anglers is, how fishing began in their lives, or how they started, or how they got into it.
Right.
How did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I've been fishing fairly avidly since I was about 2 years old. And for some reason, fishing and just casting and things like that really appealed to me, even at a very early age. So there's, pictures of me standing on the front porch as a 2-year-old in a diaper casting. So,
chucking it out into your front yard.
Exactly. Yeah. You got it. And basically, like most people, started off catching sunfish and things like that. And that was actually in Connecticut. And then kept going, kept fishing for more and more, started reading every fishing book that the library had. My first carp was in Rhode Island in the Blackstone River Canal.
Oh, nice.
And it was a little mirror, which I wouldn't mind catching today, actually. But anyhow, that was, I didn't have anyone to, we didn't really have internet at that point even.
Right.
And, all my fishing knowledge outside of what, outside of fishing for panfish, basically, or a little bit of trout fishing with my dad was, from books. So that first carp was purely based on just reading books about it.
So that was an intentional capture?
Yeah, I was trying to catch carp. Okay. And I got lucky that there was a large school of these little mirrors under the just hanging out, and just tossed a weightless worm in the middle of them and
sucked it up.
Exactly. And that, ever since it's been, carp have been a species that I've really spent a lot of time fishing for.
Now, the obviously the interest in the angling, that's obviously what kind of grew on your want or your drive to kind of be part of, or that look into doing more within the marine world or the fishing biology world, like
exactly.
That kind of
thing.
Thing.
So I was, looking. I wanted to do something with fish, and there's a few options you can pursue if you want to do something with fish. You can try commercial fishing, or you can become a fishery scientist of some sort. And commercial fishing these days is maybe not the most reliable career path with this state of everything the way it is. So.
A lot more people frowning on the commercial side of it now, aren't there? Like, obviously, decimation of numbers of fish and... Yeah,
well, everything is overfished at this point, basically. Been at it for a couple hundred years at this point, and they've caught a lot of the fish, especially on the ground fish of the North Atlantic and whatnot.
Yeah.
Certainly taken a bit of a beating. And then there's also, of course, freshwater commercial fishing, especially not so much in New England, but in the South for catfish and things like that.
Upstate New York salmon and all that.
Right, and there's, obviously some of the so-called Asian carp, there's some...
Yeah.
We can talk about that,
well, actually, my last episode I had Gilbert Huxley on, we kind of talked on the Asian carp and how they're introducing like a method or a scientific method of some kind of pellet that they feed, and it's been... whatever's in it is kind of designed to impact that kind of the genetics of spawning, so that the carp becomes sterile,
right?
Or the Asian carp becomes sterile of some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure how it works, but
they're obviously
they're taking over, aren't they?
Yeah, they're well. It's not unlike the introduction of any new species to a system. So initially, you're going to have this huge boom, in population, and it's just going to go crazy,
right?
And then they will die, back down to, it'll settle at some level which is lower than it is currently when they're still colonizing. But we really don't know what that's going to look like at this point.
Did you have any part of that while you were down that way, seeing any kind of hands-on?
No, I didn't have much to do with Asian carp.
Yeah.
Most of my stuff was focused on sport fish.
Oh, wow, okay.
And fishing access and habitat and things like that. So,
oh, wow.
There wasn't a whole lot of invasive species work that I took part in. Yeah,
probably for the best.
Yeah, it's just that's fine with me. It's a lot of what I did was monitor fish populations, tweak any regulations,
Right.
look at trying to enhance. Add new shore fishing sites. Sometimes the utility companies would be interested in doing something like that.
So just kind of taking like access land to open it up for people to
right,
kind of have
exactly. Try and improve access for anglers, things
Nice.
like that. So
it's always important, right?
yeah, well, I think so.
Yeah. I wish we could have more of that around this way. Not that it's not enough, but
you can always have you can always use more, and it's very much a thing. If you build it, they will come, right? So
yeah, it's like the carp. If you bait, they will feed. Yeah.
or not.
Or in our case, right now, no.
Yeah. They're just happy doing their own thing right now.
But that's fantastic, though. I mean, so was that something that was in the guidelines of your job responsibilities, or was that exactly what you were there to do?
It was part of my job responsibilities, and a lot of it was targeted at traditional sport fish, so crappie, bass, catfish, things like that.
Yeah.
And that for those for the first two there. You're looking at habitat improvements, adding fish attractors, things like that.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So in creating areas for anglers to fish for those species. The catfish was, depending on the state and what the sort of I don't know what you'd call it exactly, kind of their method for addressing these things, but sometimes they'd have smaller fishing ponds where you could have fish feeders on and things like that.
Oh, so like automated,
exactly, yeah,
feeders.
floating,
yeah, okay.
generally floating
in some of the trout ponds, and
right?
stuff.
Exactly, the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
but for catfish as opposed to trout, and then as I said, trying to improve shore fishing access, which is something I feel.
What would that entail normally? Is that like clearing of areas or building like decking or
it could
that
involve all those things, exactly.
Okay.
So making sure that there's a clear area on the bank, making sure that there's a reasonable access to that spot, that sort of thing, and trying to make sure that it's a good experience, especially for newer anglers and families and things that are not looking to get off the beaten trail too much or anything like that.
Yeah, that and then the educational piece is obviously the take home, isn't it, for a lot of new anglers that kind of they're always learning something from it, which is always an important part of it.
Right, and that's something that's also been of great interest to me, both for carp and other species, is helping people to learn to fish, and and part of that involves having a safe, secure spot that's you stand a reasonable chance of catching something at, and that can be harder to find than.
I think it is. Yeah, I mean, even just even now, like I think a lot of the times, if you go fishing as a new angler and you don't catch anything, it's obviously a lesser chance you're going to go again.
Yes.
Versus if you're actually in an area where it's going to somewhat produce a good fish, and you're probably more than likely not want to go. You'll want to go again and actually try and catch some more. So.
Yeah. So there's a large part of it. Obviously you're fishing, so you want to catch a fish. The other parts, of course, are the sort of surroundings, and if you're a family with small children and everything, you want a fairly secure environment to go fishing in. You don't want to go to anywhere sketchy or anything
some
like
crazy
that.
rave parties going on in the forest of wherever.
Right. You don't. That's not really the venue you're looking for.
Right.
So, having good, secure sort of easy access with platforms and things. Piers obviously help if you're not too good at casting. You can drop it straight.
Now those areas. Is that something that the state was that with the state? That's
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So now, do they list those areas? Like, is it like on the websites?
Most states these days have some sort of list of fishing opportunities within the state, and that are either stocked or have some sort of improvements or something like that. The Carolinas both do. Texas does. Massachusetts does.
Yeah.
Connecticut, I believe, does it.
Yeah,
as well.
you know what, I've seen on it's social media more than anywhere else that I've seen it, but they do post their stocking days.
Right.
I've seen it where they even show some images, some more so for the trout, I think, and fish of that kind of nature. But they post the locations, and I don't know if it's beneficial to do that or not, because obviously everyone's just going to start showing up, and all the fish are caught instantly.
Right. Well, that's sort of a.
But you want people to enjoy it,
Yeah, right. You want them to use it. You don't want the fish, especially in some of these warmer water ponds, specifically where trout are stocked. They don't survive year round, so it's less of a waste if they're all caught.
Catch them while they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just they're designed to be caught and eaten. So that's.
Could never get my head around that. I mean, I've done it with salmon, the catch and eat.
Right.
It's always. I mean, obviously, I think it's just a growing up thing. That catch and release of carp or any kind of coarse fish over the pond is a natural thing. But I suppose it's just one of those things.
Yeah. So here in the States, a lot of fishing is the sort of history of it has been subsistence rather than catch and release. And that, with certain species certainly still is the case. Catfish and trout are two main examples, which many states now are stocked in ponds generally where there is easy access for anyone to go catch them. And, they're stocked to be eaten. So.
Yeah, there's plenty of them as well, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, they generally have a fairly high stocking rate, and your chances of success are quite good normally.
Just before you move, you're spending a lot of time helping the American Carp Society.
Yes. So,
what was your involvement with that? And
so they, obviously had a bit of a reboot not too long ago.
Yeah.
And they asked if I would sort of act as their sort of biological advisor if they had any questions regarding anything on the biology or ecology side of carp or aquatic systems in general. Really.
Yeah.
So I've been, involved with, answering a few questions there. Involved with them, helping them get things going at Mill Creek in Texas.
That was quite a big part of it. Right? You spent a lot of time there.
Their event and everything there. And just generally assisting as requested, basically. So, that's been a good experience working with Sean and Wayne and everything. So.
Awesome. Now that obviously that venue itself, Mill Creek's obviously it's on radar for many people now. They know that it's
definitely a known location for sure.
It offers some good fish there now. Obviously, some of the captures have been quite substantial, haven't they? Yeah.
It's not an easy lake by any means. There's not that many carp in it. They get quite big, and there's if you get it right, you can do quite well. But you got to put in the effort like anywhere else.
Yeah, that comes down to like a baiting strategy.
Yeah, baiting and location. And really, I feel that location is most of the
anywhere
of the picture.
In general.
Anywhere really, but especially on lakes such as Mill Creek that are relatively low stocked.
Do you think that just comes from the mentality of the biologist, kind of the scientific side of it in your mind, like from the history of like kind of looking at what you've learned?
Yeah, so I spent a fair amount of time on a number of lakes.
Yeah,
and with modern sonar and everything, you can see the fish. So, spending just time on the water and just while you're doing whatever and seeing where the fish are, and then on my own time, spent a fair amount of time messing around with baiting spots and things, and seeing how the fish reacted to that. And basically, what it comes down to is if you put bait where they don't want to be, they're probably just not going to go there. So you
almost just a waste of time.
It's a waste of time and money. If you put your bait in the wrong spot, it really nothing will induce them to go eat it. The catfish and things will show up, but the carp, there's so much natural food for them that they
Kind of like where we're at now.
exactly. Yeah, they don't need our bait.
They don't want it. They just don't want to bloody know it.
No, it wouldn't be so bad if we didn't know there were so many of them here.
That, you know what, I think that a lot of the time for me, that's what kind of makes it worse. Is like, they're here, they're in front of you, and yet they're still not getting on the bait just because there's so much other food source for them.
Especially right now in the fall, all the vegetation in the water is dying back. All that snails and everything else that was in that vegetation is now getting exposed. So there's just pretty much food everywhere. There's no need for them to really be dependent on bait at all. So
which is unfortunate for us.
it is very unfortunate.
Great for them, obviously, but boost up the weight. Now, obviously, probably a lot more about that in terms of the dietary needs and what really helps pump them up. But things like the mussels, obviously, we know they love that stuff.
If you look at anywhere that has has really good healthy fat carp in it, it has a lot of food items, and there's a few main ones. Mussels they certainly like. You can certainly see that in retention sling at times.
Oh yeah.
Crayfish, another one they really like, and then bloodworms, of course. Most of the scientific studies have really pointed at the bloodworms being the bulk of a carp's diet.
Isn't that crazy? Because they're so. I mean, they're in some cases they're microscopic, aren't they?
They're really small. They're maybe a centimeter or something like that. But there can be a lot of them in the silt, and they're high in protein, and they can be easily digested because there's not a whole lot of hard bits to them, obviously. So
that's it. Yeah, and like that, in my mind, it reverts back this time of year when I'd be back over in England fishing. The maggots would come into play,
right. Mm-hmm.
And obviously here it's not a thing. And I think if we were to use them, we'd probably just be plagued by, in my mind, what I would say a nuisance fish, but just other general species that would pick them up.
The bluegill and other sunfish species would definitely appreciate a large baiting effort with maggots.
Do you think it would result in some carp at some point? Like,
yes, absolutely. I've messed around a little bit with.
Have you? Yeah, you've done that.
Yeah, with maggots. Well, not the blue bottle or anything like that, but with soldier fly larvae, which are a maggot as well.
Yeah, okay.
And I have caught carp on those quite well. If you can find a spot that doesn't have too many sunfish and other smaller fish that are,
because it'd be one after the other, wouldn't it? Otherwise, I mean, with that in regards to that, I mean,
once if there's a lot of sunfish and suckers or catfish, they love those things too, and golden shiners for that matter.
Oh yeah,
they'll get on that. So, I have, had success with that. I've also had success with night crawlers, chopped into little sections. I
think that's something that gets forgotten about, isn't it? Obviously, the worm is like, you look at a lot of states, even I think New York state record was, currently still is, well, without claiming some of the other records that have been caught, but
the official record.
Yeah, that was a night crawler, wasn't it? So I mean, it just
I know of many lake records at least that were caught on just worms, someone fishing for catfish normally or something like that, just with a night crawler on the bottom, and it's much more natural for them to eat that.
Oh, it's a huge natural food, isn't it? I mean, their worms are pretty much anywhere and everywhere.
And they get washed in all the time and whatnot. I have found, from my own experience, that you can get away with fishing these natural type baits in the, cooler months in the winter when the other fish species have slowed down. The carp are still feeding, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you can get away with fishing these softer, natural things.
In terms of your approach to fishing for carp or fish in general, you do a lot of feeder fishing and float fishing and stuff like that.
I do a little bit of everything.
How did all that kind of come around for you to get into that?
Well, it was really born of lack of time. So, I really obviously enjoy doing, a good multi-day session or whatever for carp, but sometimes I just have a couple hours, and to get everything set up, time's
gone on, isn't it? But
exactly,
by the time you got the rods out,
the time you have includes that time to set up and everything. So it's a lot quicker to get a feeder out or get a float out than it is to set up a couple of rods, spalm out some bait, all that,
No, I mean, doing that, do you find that you catch rates for obviously different size fish, isn't it? Generally, you're going for.
Yeah, the feeders and float both. They're obviously smaller fish mostly, but on that lighter gear, you can have quite a fight on your hands.
Well, especially a bigger fish happens to come through the swim and just get in there and pick that bait up, then it's
the fight
is on, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
Have you had any memorable captures like that where it's been you're not expecting it and then good fish has come along?
Yeah, a couple of ones. It's not necessarily that I've caught any huge fish doing that as of date, but I have caught fish when I was messing around, say, with my feeder rod and had my normal carp gear out as well. And then I managed to hook a carp on the feeder, which, and I didn't catch anything on the carp rods, but.
Isn't that funny how that works? Yeah.
And, it wasn't a huge fish, but I didn't get, literally, it saved me from a blank. So,
well, that's better than some fish is better than no fish, right? I suppose.
How do you feel about catfish?
Yeah, well, I've had my fair share of those today, enough for the year. So, a few last night. You this morning, so
I haven't had any. It's very odd.
Yeah, I don't know what is that all about.
I don't know. Normally, it's not that way. I attract catfish from.
No, this is definitely different. I'm enjoying this. I might have to try and get a few more of these casts like on the bank in session. I think it's different. It's a different vibe for me. It feels different too. It's normally like obviously anyone that has listened to any of the other podcasts before now is remotely or in a office setting,
right?
Like
this is nice. I like it. I'm watching the carp roll and not eat.
Yeah,
bait. So I've seen several down behind.
Okay, yeah. Oh, damn things. Hopefully, though, I've got a little bit of time left. Something will show up. I feel positive about it.
Yeah, and these river systems are really dynamic. They're constantly changing, and especially we've seen what the water level here has gone up and down several times.
Oh yeah, it's coming back up again now. So
dropped a foot in just a little very short period.
Yeah,
not too long
it did.
ago.
Yeah, absolutely went right down quick.
Slowly filling back up, and that all plays into what the fish are doing.
Now, going from, like you mentioned, a lot of reservoirs and the mem dug lakes or whatever you want to call them, that, to the river system. Is that a big kind of draw for you? You like the river side of things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like it all. Let's face it. I like fishing. But the river is really really different. Especially going from a river, say in the south that is generally muddy and full of trees and things like that, and where we're fishing now, water is very clear.
Oh yeah, it's as clear as it could get, I think, up this way.
And there's a few trees around, but mostly it's rocks, and there's no mud to speak of, and it's a very very different river.
Yeah. And knowing the size of the fish too, I think that's a big draw, isn't it? It's a big want to kind of really get the fullest potential. The biggest fish you possibly could. Knowing they're there swimming around is like.
Yes, very much
more drive to get after it.
Well, yes, it's worth sitting here for however long to catch one of these fish.
Yeah.
They're here. It's just a matter of waiting for them to slip up. The other interesting thing is the size structure of the fish in this river. Or even in some of the lakes around here.
Absolutely.
There's a much, I would say, higher percentage of lakes that don't have a stunted carp population in the north. And part of that may be the winter kill of young carp if they don't make it over a certain size.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably know more of that in terms of the temperatures and stuff like that, but you
so there is, there's scientific literature out there, indicating that if they don't make it over X size, they won't survive the winter.
Yeah.
And, obviously keeps the population down, and only the ones that grow fast enough will
Now, is there
survive.
in your mind or records that you've seen, is there like a specific fingerling size or size that those fish need to reach in the wild, like in a setting like this, to survive that?
Yeah, there. I want to say that I've seen a couple of different sizes. 100 and don't quote me on this. 140 millimeters or 170 millimeters, something like that. And if they hadn't made it over that size,
Chances are they're gonna.
Right, and you don't get that in the South because it never gets cold enough. The average wintertime temperature in North Texas it's like 55 degrees or something,
it's ideal,
which is like 11 or 12 degrees Celsius, something like that.
Yeah. Which is optimal fishing temperature.
Exactly, and
fish just popped out behind you.
well, hopefully it will get on my bait, which is over there.
But yeah, they are optimal temperatures, aren't they? I mean, and I think if this side of the country were to see those, I like the seasonal temperatures change and stuff like that, and the winter, the fall months, and spring temps as well. But I think if we were to have that consistent temperature without the big freeze and the fish sizes, the growth rates would probably
they would definitely
go
increase.
up, right?
But the the flip side there that you got to remember is, of course, that you may end up with more fish surviving, overwintering, and then there's more competition for food.
Results in more smaller fish as opposed to the big ones. Yeah.
So it's a fairly complex system. It's not as simple as saying, if this happened, this would happen.
Well,
maybe,
I often think about
not.
it. I'm like, okay, it's great like having these waters with the predatory fish in, the pike, the muskie, because it definitely obviously keeps the numbers of smaller fish down. Like that's for them is probably a go-to food source, like a small 4 to 4 pound carp for a pike.
Well, everything likes to eat a small carp, and that starts from when they're an egg. The bluegill love carp eggs,
right?
And they gobble up as many as they possibly can, and then if any hatch out, well, the blugill still eat them until they're
that, and they obviously they eat themselves as well, don't they? I mean, in a spawn phase, like the bigger carp will pick up their own spawn. And
there's not the interesting thing about carp is there's the sort of I guess I don't know what you call it, collective sort of impression that carp really like to eat fish eggs.
Yeah,
and that's it's not really borne out by any of the studies that have been done to date. They've even taken a carp, put it in a small cage enclosure with a spawning bass, largemouth bass, and it didn't touch the bass eggs, and there was actually more juvenile bass in the cage with the carp than the one without the carp.
That's something to think about, isn't it?
It is. It doesn't...
Considering there's a lot of claims made to it, isn't there, that carp, destruct and kind of devastate these bass fisheries or, well-known bass fisheries, or they're wiping out the bass spawn. And
right, where they're either messing up the nests and everything.
Yeah. Is that... obviously
that's really hasn't played out in the literature, really. Now, the biggest thing is carp's feeding habits, and they stir up the bottom. If you have a very silty bottom that is going to be suspended easily in the water, then they will suspend that. How that got in that place, though, is often a human interaction with runoff and poor land use practices that got it to that place.
The buildup of the sediment and the silt, all that stuff. Yeah.
So, a carp is just a fish. It does what it does. You see, this water there's tons of carp out here, and we can see the bottom in 6 feet pretty easily, it looks like. So,
and again, I know obviously it's slightly different, isn't it, for a moving water versus a still like lake or reservoir, but even then there is a natural occurring current in reservoirs and lakes, isn't there?
Wind action generates plenty of current,
right.
Depending on the lake, if it's a spring-fed lake, it's generally going to be clearer than a lake that has, some sort of...
Sometimes I do like having a little color to the water, unless it's on I think a river system's different though, isn't it? I mean, when you compare the two, like the lake and the river, clear water, slightly colored water.
And super clear water, if it's not a river, it's a really clear lake or something like that, I really haven't had much luck during the day, honestly.
Yeah. No, it's always, for me, it's always been late evening, just as the sun's dropping off, or those very early hours, 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Exactly. That's what I've always found in those scenarios. One thing, touching back on the natural versus man-made. Here in New England, there's a lot of natural lakes. They may have a little dam built to raise the level, but there's still a natural lake. They were already there. Whereas, as in Texas, obviously, as I pointed out, there was only one. Do
you think there's more? Carp. Let's talk. Carp specifically. Do you think there's more opportunity for bigger fish in lakes than the natural kind of runoffs from the rivers?
I think in natural lakes, there is a higher chance of having better fish, and this is why. In man-made reservoirs, the reason there isn't any lakes is because of the sediment load coming into that system. So in any of the lakes that have a river feeding it or anything like that are man-made, they have a lifespan.
Okay.
And that lifespan can be fairly short in some cases because of all the sediment being washed in by the river. Now, that tends to make the water fairly muddy, turbid, and with that the more turbid the water, generally speaking, the more carp survive, and you end up with a stunted carp population. Yeah. Not always.
Even then, the carp are still super, super hardy, aren't they? Most of them can survive, in a ditch drain.
They're obviously a super resilient species. That's why they're so widespread, is because they can tolerate a very wide range of habitats and environmental conditions. But the natural lakes they're naturally there because there wasn't any sediment. They've been there since the glaciers left, and they're still here
since the caveman.
Right, exactly. 10,000 years or whatever, and that generally means they have clear water because there's not all that sediment coming in. There's a couple other things. There's generally more oxygen. If you got clear water, the thermocline won't necessarily become anoxic, that sort of thing.
Right. Which is, again, on the bigger lakes is quite a big thing, isn't it? Depending on the levels you're fishing at, the depths.
Yeah. So that's, if I had one thing to tell everyone to pay attention to, especially in the summer months when it's warmer,
right,
and you're fishing in a still water, not river doesn't really apply nearly as much, but if you're fishing in any lake or pond or anything, keep in mind that below a certain level there may be no oxygen, and sometimes that can be alarmingly shallow, like 10 feet, or even less. Sometimes I've seen it be up to
you've actually gone out, done readings,
done profiling for it, and so in some lakes in the heat of the summer when there's very little wind,
just sucked right out of
it can be 1.5 meters. Below that there's no oxygen, so there's really not going to be any fish below that point.
That, and there's not much else of anything, like no plant life, no
there's not going to be especially if the lake is more turbid, there's going to be no light down there. It's going to be pitch black. There's no oxygen, hence there's very little food. Even if, and you could catch carp there by baiting up, and if they happen to be around and they were hungry enough,
through,
they'll drop down through where they can't really breathe, grab some mouthfuls, come back up. But that, to me, it's never seemed really ideal. It's much better to fish where they're going to be comfortable feeding.
Is there a way to meter that or measure that when you're as an angler?
It's very difficult. You have to have basically a temperature and dissolved oxygen probe to do that with.
Let's go grab one of those real quick.
Yeah, they're only $500.
Yeah.
Some state agencies, and you can try and push them in that direction if they're not already doing it, but do the readings.
Okay.
Tennessee, for example, does profiling of some of their lakes, I know, or at least they used to. And that information, I don't know if it's online or you just need to contact the biologist that's oversees whatever lake you're interested in and get that information from them. But
because that could be quite handy, couldn't it? Like, I mean, depending on the areas you're fishing and the zones.
Oh, absolutely. The other sort of roundabout way to get it is with a fish finder. And if you can see the thermocline, where the temperature really
dropping
changes,
off,
and then you can sometimes use that in combination with, the water is over the deeper than the thermocline now. Do I see any fish below that thermocline? All right, no, not really. Okay, then that's probably where
good chance that that's there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely something different, isn't it? I mean, again, like you mentioned, not many people would probably even think about stuff like that.
No, a lot of the standard method I see here is you go to the lake, you blast it out basically as far as you can, or whatever's comfortable, and that might be and if it's 15 feet of water, most anglers are quite happy with that.
Optimal feeding zone for most places at kind of 8 to 15 foot depths, isn't it?
Other people that doesn't always work out if there's no oxygen down there. It's simply there's not.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of something food for thought kind of situation. Really something to think about. I don't think many people really think about that.
I didn't, honestly, up until I was on the path to becoming a fisheries biologist.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a scientific side of it.
I really never thought of it, and I was I can think of a couple of times when I was fishing way too deep, and the reason I didn't catch anything is because there was no oxygen there. Yeah. But I hadn't it's not something that I think most anglers think of.
No, not at all. But again, I know, you only have to look at some catch reports for other anglers in the world or other lakes, globally. I mean, even St. Lawrence River, for example. I mean, there's spots there below the dam, one of the dams. It's easy 50 to 60 feet. Right. Fish are getting caught.
Yeah,
off the bottom at that depth. So
absolutely, and if the oxygen is there, that's there's no reason why not.
Yeah,
if the habitat is suitable, but you go in a fairly stagnant lake during a dry period in the heat of summer when the wind dies off, and there's oxygen gets used up pretty rapidly. So that's something that is I feel I can't overstress when it comes to
and now I mean, obviously, like you said, if you're there and you're fishing and you're putting bait in, and it's kind of a waste, really, isn't it?
Right. Well, that's it's it goes back to the location is more important than some of these lakes. They have a beautiful channel, old creek channel down the middle of them. It's 13, 15 feet. It looks great.
Yeah.
But there's no oxygen below about
nothing
8
else
feet.
happening.
So it's better to go find a flat area, and I have seen this play out where in the lakes that really do stratify like this and have anoxic conditions below relatively shallow depths. Most of the carp are typically found in fairly shallow flats that are just about at that thermocline level. They're not anoxic yet. They're right about as deep as you can go without
borderline.
Right.
Yeah.
And then any sort of flat area that has a fair amount of feeding area, and that's where the fish tend to hang out. It makes sense, really.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it from that kind of point of view, it's like, all right, well, for some, it probably opens up a lot of options that they wouldn't have looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. Because these places, they may not look terribly interesting. It's just a big flat. It's all about 8 foot deep. Some of these lakes, that might be just the place you want to be fishing during the warmer months. Once it cools down, obviously, the lake mixes up, and the fish can go anywhere they want comfortably. But
there you go, listeners. Something to think about in your angling. I know I've never really thought about it like that. But again, you look into it as from a scientific point of view, and you think about it, and you're like, oh blimey, no wonder I didn't catch a fish. I was fishing in
absolutely
20 plus feet of water with no oxygen, and how do I think there's going to be a carp down there surviving?
Right, and that's where sort of my hobby if you will.
Yeah.
Or, my passion for angling can really intersect with the sort of scientific side.
When you're out on the bank, do you approach it from that scientific point of
Well,
view?
I certainly think about what I just mentioned as far as the oxygen and everything, if it's a lake that would be applicable, and I certainly try to think about, it's not really the biology, it would be more technically the ecology of what is going on. So right now, we've already, of course, touched on, the aquatic plants are dying back. That's going to be releasing a lot of food.
Now
There's fish crashing behind you all over the place.
That sounded like a good one.
That's probably the 8th fish I've seen back there.
All right, we're going to have to get Rod on the spot.
Anyways, so yeah, it looking at the ecology of it, and ecology just means looking at everything as opposed to just the biology of the carp.
The whole scope of it.
It's the other organisms as well, as not just the fish you're after, and try and keep that in mind as much as possible when it comes to your location, especially, because I keep coming back to location, but honestly I think that's the single most important thing.
Yeah, because again, I'm sure it's happened to many anglers, but I've been in situations where I've moved a rod, a single bait or rod from 6 feet from the left to the right, and it's changed everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it could be obviously on a bigger scale as well, but I think you really, like you said, you really got to take into account everything when you're out there. But I don't know. I think someone like yourself that's got the inside kind of looking out from a scientific perspective, I think it definitely changes the way you fish, your thought process, bait selection, like time of year, when you're going to go.
There's all sorts of things, but the thing about, at a very basic level, about science is it's not science is simply a method of learning things. It's not this sort of, it can answer all questions equally well, that sort of thing. It simply can't, unless you can figure out a way to ask the question in a testable way. That's all that science is being able to test a hypothesis. And a lot of things haven't been tested, especially when it comes to carp fishing.
Right.
And there's so many variables. It'd be very hard to test a lot of these things, if not impossible. But, I use what I've learned as best I can. But, there's certain things like what color pop-up is the best. Yeah. Given whatever conditions. Well, there's such a wide scope.
Isn't it?
It's pretty much infinite. And could that be worked out? Yeah, probably, but it hasn't been done, and I would love to do it, but I don't have the time or money.
The scope on something like that to figure out what pop-up is preferred over another.
There would be
endless, isn't it?
Well.
You've got temperature, time of year, depth, so much.
The various, pH of the water. There's so many variables that go into that question. And then of course the pop-up themselves.
Yeah.
Good Lord, there's a lot of hook bait options these days.
Yeah, so, there are probably too many, really.
It's really endless. The sort of variables that you would have to to control for to really test that. But could it be done? Yeah, probably. Is it practical? Probably not.
I think if anyone's the guy to do it, it sounds like you're the guy to go to try and figure it out. Maybe.
Oh, I'd love to do it, but until I win the lottery or something, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. But for now, I think we're pretty content getting out and.
Yeah, well,
doing what we're doing now, and just
I got the scientific background, but I'm an angler at heart, right? So,
yeah, there you go.
It's I'm just getting out and watching the fish roll and not be caught is
it's enough to drive you to keep going.
Yes, there was another one behind you just now. So
bloody things.
Yeah.
So have you got obviously for the rest of the fall, you've got a few sessions kind of in mind and planned out that you want to get out to do? Anything in mind big for the spring? Now you're kind of somewhat settled in.
Yeah. So we were talking about this earlier prior to the podcast, and there's a couple different ways you can approach your fishing, and you can just kind of go around sort of shotgun blast style and try and just fish as many different places as you can, and you will luck into fish, and it's maybe not completely luck, but you will find some good fish.
Yeah.
What I've been focusing on the last several years now is picking a couple of waters and trying to focus on those a little bit more, spend more time on them, kind of learn what the fish do a little bit more. So, for me, I haven't been up here that long. So, finding out a little bit about their movements throughout the year, that sort of thing, where they spawn.
Plays a key part, doesn't it, to everything? Yeah.
Because, you can't catch a fish that's not there.
That's it.
So
you also can't catch them if you're not there. So.
And as it turns out right now, you can't catch them if they are there.
Well, yeah, another one. I keep hearing them, and I know they're going. At some point, something's going to come through, and hopefully,
it may be one of those things. And I've seen this. Once one picks up,
starts that feeding,
then they just go for it.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Yeah.
I remember as a child, there was a koi pond at this garden center.
Yeah.
And because I was 8 years old and obsessed with fish, I found some crackers or something to feed to the koi. And they were very tame fish. They'd come right over. But I was trying to hand feed them out of my, and they would come up and look at it. Wouldn't touch it. Yep. They'd just always turn away. Then one fish came up and ate that food. Then they were all over me.
It's like triggers them.
Yeah, that one fish. They wouldn't touch it before. That one fish ate it, and then they were all wanting some, and they were all, coming right up and taking it out of my hand. But it was like, a switch was flipped.
Hopefully that switch flips for us fairly soon, and something happens. But
yes.
Got a little bit of time left, so you never know. But
we're hoping this podcast would do it, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna have. I think I've got some lunch. I'm gonna get on the go in a minute, and that maybe always happens, doesn't it, when you're in the middle of doing something? But
I just need to disassemble my net. I think that might help.
Yeah, put it away in the car and just wait, and then it'll go.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, yes. Evan, thanks ever so much for
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to just be outdoors. I'm definitely going to do a few more like this. I think it's a little different. It's nice to just be watching the trees and the wildlife and the water and stuff. So
absolutely.
But thanks for kind of sharing with us some of your insight, especially on the scientific level, so to speak.
Yeah, anytime.
Appreciate it.
Happy to talk.
Fantastic stuff. On behalf of the Big Carp News podcast, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy our podcast, please feel free to subscribe via your preferred platform. And remember, you can also leave us a comment and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to Evan for taking the time out and sharing some of his past moments with us and talking on the more scientific approach of his carp angling. For more upcoming episodes of the Big Carp News podcast, written articles, product reviews, and much, much more, be sure to check out the Big Carp News website over at www.bigcarp.news. Also, don't forget to check out bigcarptackle.com for all your carp fishing needs right here in the USA. As always, thanks for listening, stay safe and stay carpy.